Welcome back, AG Sports. Thank you again for tuning in. I do have two more picks I want to add on to my preseason week 3 card or slate or whatever you want to call it. So we'll get to those first. And then after that, I do have some what I personally find to be hot takes that I truly believe in for the NFL season. It's going to be like just generic NFL info, but also stuff that's going to relate to fantasy and to gambling if you want to use it that way. But let's get to the picks first. So number one is going to be the Ravens. It's right here in this right-hand corner of Odds Jam. I would click on it, but the numbers pretty much stayed the same. It's Ravens minus 3.5 everywhere you go. And there's really very little handicapping in this one. So any serious tout that I follow, and there's really only like 3 or 4 that I really pay attention to and like have myself alerted to for their picks, they're all taking the Ravens. And I was kind of hesitant, not gonna lie, because the handicapping at the time was really just, well, they're on a streak. 19. You don't bet against the streak, and if you bet with the streak, you can only lose once because then the streak's over, right? So that's somewhat of why I'm taking it. But aside from that, I just went back and I watched the preseason week 2 game with Tyler Hundley, the backup for the Ravens, the backup quarterback that is. And he's going to probably be playing again. He played the entire game in preseason week 2. He actually looks really good. And so he's probably going to see a lot of playing time in this one as well. I don't expect to see like Lamar Jackson or anything like that. But he's just impressive for a backup, to say the least. As far as Washington is concerned, they really haven't come out saying how much time is going to be dedicated to the starters, if any. And with guys like Terry McLaurin and Ryan Fitzpatrick already, knowing what to do, and apparently the word out of camp is that they have just looked amazing. They've hooked up on several like touchdown passes, and that they've just been, basically in sync with each other, since like the middle of training camp. So I don't know if we'll see them at all, but if we do, I expect it to be very little. I don't think that anything needs to be worked on between most of the starters, like with McLaurin or with Antonio Gibson, and they don't really want to risk any injury to them. Now, they have not scored a touchdown the entire preseason, so that is kind of a reason to maybe put those guys in there for a series or two just to see if you can get a touchdown out of them, to maybe have something to kind of, build some momentum on as we get forward. But I don't think that's going to be their main drive. I think they're really just more concerned with health, maybe scouting some guys at the end of their roster. So, end of the day here, I fully expect the Ravens to win and to cover at the minus 3.5. Some of the spots I looked at, you can get a minus 3 if you're willing to pay the juice, and it takes it up to like minus 130, minus 135. That's up to you if you want to do that. It is grabbing a key number, but in a game like this, I don't think you need to do that. I think you're probably better off taking the minus 110 or the minus 108 at some discount books and just taking the minus 3.5. Which brings me to my next game, though, because it's a very similar line, and that's going to be the Titans and the Bears. So first thing I want to point out here is that the Titans have just been totally ransacked by COVID. I think it's up to 5 players now, and then at least, well, obviously Mike Vrabel, so their head coach, but I believe it's at least 2 or 3 more coaches. So these guys just have a lot of other stuff going on. The majority of their starters have not even really been able to practice because of that, because of COVID. They don't want to put them in there, don't want to risk it, and like guys like Ryan Tannehill, he's vaccinated, but he tested positive for COVID. So guys like that, they can't even really get into the building. Aside from that, though, the practices, I'm sure, have been very disjointed. When you have your head coach not even able to get into the office, and then some assistants also not able to get in there. The guys that are left over, great. I'm sure that they're doing the best that they can, but at the end of the day, it's going to be kind of hard to jump in and fill that role in when you really only have like a day or two to prepare and then get ready to start practicing and trying to implement whatever you're going to implement for this preseason game. So I don't expect them to have a great showing here. And really, some of it is personnel, some of it is preparation. So I'm fully on the Bears here. Now, that's why I'm against the Titans, or that's why I'm trying to fade the Titans. But why do I like the Bears? Well, first of all, Justin Fields just got officially listed as the backup for Week 1. And I actually kind of expect him to come out with a little bit of like a fuck you mode. I think that we all as fans understand why they're not trying to put him out there against Aaron Donald Week 1. And most, if not all of us, expect him to get that starting role sooner than later. I would say, really, I'm expecting Week 2, if I'm being totally honest. But at the very latest, by Week 4. I mean, at the very latest, just looking at their schedule, looking at historical trends, all that kind of stuff, points to him starting by Week 4. So I'm hoping he's not too discouraged by this. But as far as preseason Week 3 comes, it really helps us a lot here. Because, one, we know we have a good to great quarterback that is going to be leading this team. Regardless of who else is out there, he's the best quarterback on the field. And he's probably the best player on the field. And so if we have the better quarterback and a better prepared team, that already kind of makes me lean that way. Plus the Bears, to me, I think are going to just be out there trying to make sure he feels comfortable, make sure he has the right plays, some easy plays he can connect on. So while I don't really expect to see a lot of the Bears starters like Allen Robinson or even like Darnell Mooney, I do think they'll get the win here. And the Titans really haven't shown us a great defense either this entire preseason. I don't expect that to change. So taking the Bears -3, and I really have no doubts about that. Now, obviously, it's still football. These are still humans, so they could go, that could go totally sideways. But I like the play, and I think the reasoning is pretty solid. So we're going to add those two plays to my other play, which was Vikings. At the time, I believe it was +3.5. It's actually gone up to +4.5. So the line has moved against us, and I think a lot of that is just people seeing these headlines that Andy Reid is going to play the starters for the first half, and that Patrick Mahomes is going to get a lot of playing time. And while Patrick Mahomes obviously is, that dude's freaking amazing. I love him. I think he's great. And I could see them getting out to a very strong first half. There's a few things that I think still work in our favor. And while obviously I would have loved it more if they decided to not play their starters, it's not a total death nail because they're playing the first half. So first of all, if you've watched any of the interviews and read the commentary from Andy Reid, he's not very committal on this whole, we're going to play them the first half come hell or high water. He keeps saying, we'll see how it goes, we'll find out. It's, that's the plan. And so to me, what that says is if they come out, they look fine, they score a touchdown on the first drive, that's probably the wrap, for them, for just get the hell out of there and be done. Because how much more do you need to see out of Patrick Mahomes? His main focus, from what he said and what I've read, is that he wants to see the offensive line and he wants to give them as much time to gel as they can. And every time I hear him say the starters, I'm immediately thinking that's who he's talking about. I do not think he means he needs to see a whole half out of Patrick Mahomes. Maybe he wants to give him some, extended time, maybe the whole first quarter, to make sure that he feels comfortable and confident behind that offensive line. But guys like Kelsey and Tyreek Hill and anybody else for that matter, they don't need to be out there the whole half. That's really their job is not going to be to look at the offensive line and go block or anything like that. Not with those guys. So that's number one reason to me. But secondly, even if it is Patrick Mahomes back there and it is these starters, him saying playing starters and playing a starter-like offense, very different. Last game they put up 19 points, and obviously they got the win. It was 19-16, but they're playing a very vanilla offense. It's very much just, hey, let's go out there, let's try to get some points up onto the board. But let's not show too much. We're not pulling all the tricks out of the bag. We're not letting Mahomes run around back there. Just if there's nothing there, get out of bounds, get rid of it. That's what they're playing. They're not really trying to go all about above and beyond, okay? So while I think that the Chiefs, like I said, could have a decent first half, I don't see them putting up 30 points on these guys in the first half. And even in the regular season, they're not great first quarter starters. But let's move past that and let's go to the Viking side of the ball now. Mike Zimmer, as I showed you earlier with the last video, he still wants to see his offense clicking. Those guys have also not put up a touchdown the entire preseason, so they have more emphasis on scoring and showing what their offense can do, at least to kind of get the gears moving here and feel confident going into that week 1 matchup. So I still think the Vikings are going to be fine, and I actually think that even if they are down at the half, if it's even remotely close, I'm still going to be leaning the Vikings, because the Chiefs are going to be playing their second, probably even like really their third stringers by the end of this game. And because after that first half of getting comfortable with everybody, they're just going to be scouting. They're going to be looking at, okay, who's making this roster? You know, we only have whatever, how many spots left, and we got like 30 guys we need to cut. So they're going to really just be evaluating at that point. Whereas the Vikings, yes, they still need to do some evaluations, but they are probably going to be just as focused on getting ready for that week 1 and feeling like their players have some confidence going into that game. So those are the 3 picks, guys. We have Vikings plus 4.5 right now. I'm locked in at 3.5, but you can get the 4.5 at this point. We also have the Bears minus 3, and then we have the Ravens minus 3.5. So those are the 3 picks, guys, for preseason week 3. Do with those what you will. And if you're here for just the picks, there they are. I'm going to go ahead and getting into these hot takes. And so if that's all you were here for, thank you for tuning in. See you later. Those of you who want to stick around, I'm going to try and get through these as fast as I can. Like I said, some of them are gambling centric. Some of them are more for fantasy, and some of them are just NFL info. So let's start off with a fantasy tidbit, because I haven't been talking a lot about that, and this is fantasy drafts are coming up. So Jonathan Taylor, everybody has him ranked as a top 12 solid number 1 running back, and for the most part he's getting drafted in that first round, usually like in the middle of the first round. I think I've seen a few where he lasts to the end of the first round, but he's up there. My personal take and opinion on him is that he's going to end up as a back end RB2 by the end of this season. And as far as like a draft capital is concerned, I would really have to be in the back end of the second round to draft him, which means I'm never getting him. And so a couple reasons as to why I feel that way. So one, I had him in a few leagues last year, and I also just really was a big fan of his talent. And so coming out, he didn't start. It really took the injury from Marlon Mack for him to be able to see the field as much as he did, which to me says he wasn't really head and shoulders above the rest of the talent on that field, which is what he was kind of sold as to begin with. And maybe that was just, hey, he's a rookie, we're trying to teach him rookie lessons or whatever the hell coach is trying to do with that. And so maybe that was it. Maybe he was going to start sooner than later anyways. But even after he gets the starting job due to the Mack injury, the next thing that happens is you see Nyheim Hines coming in a lot, and he's taking work away, and he's taking a lot of passing down work. And then just throughout the season, it was really a split backfield for the majority of the season. I don't think he really saw extended number 1 running back playing time until at least week 10, week 11. Correct me if I'm wrong, but even if he did, I don't recall him having great games until later on in the season, until it was almost playoff time, and that's why a lot of people are remembering that. But aside from just being kind of an okay running back and part of a committee, which I think is going to happen again this year, by the way. A lot of people are just totally writing off Marlon Mack, and Nyheim Hines is just kind of an afterthought. Those guys are going to play. They're going to get some playing time. They're not there just for the hell of it. And Jonathan Taylor, throughout the first part of the season last year, really did not perform well on the goal line, and he had a lot of split carries with the rest of that backfield on the goal line. So that was part of the frustration of owning him last year, was that he did get to the 5 and then he would be taken out. So maybe that's changed because of Carson Wentz is in there now, but that's not something I'm really relying on because that's still the same coaching staff. But like I was saying, let's get into this year, or I should say last year, and kind of the schedule that he played. Montgomery, one of the biggest knocks on David Montgomery is that he had this hot streak against the easiest teams, the easiest rushing defenses in the NFL. Jonathan Taylor was not exactly playing, defensive juggernauts last year. If you look at his schedule, so now that I have his schedule here pulled up, week 11 is really when he started going off and he became this like Jonathan Taylor like phenomenon. So this game was not great. And fantasy wise, I think he had like 3 points. And here he started finally producing, and I'll just show you what we had on fantasy. So he had 11 points against Green Bay, and then he was injured in this week 12 matchup with Tennessee, didn't play. So week 13, 19, 33, 15, 19, 39. Amazing streak here. Amazing. This is just great. This is why everybody remembers him, and he's a first round pick. Look at how he started. So 8 points here. This 16 and 11 is obviously, so right after Matt gets injured, he gets a lot of playing time, and just obviously showed up, so he's playing. And he goes to 7, 12, 11, injured, 2, 7, 3, 11. Just this right here, guys, this seems fine, like 11, 12, 11. That seems okay, right? That is not an RB1. I'm telling you right now, that is not an RB1. When you're playing up against guys who have like a Dalvin Cook, a Christian McCaffrey, even like a Zeke Elliott or a Chubb, and they're putting up 16, 19, 20 points on you, and you're looking at that RB1 versus RB1 matchup, and you have an 11-point spot versus their 18, you're going to be pretty pissed, because that's at least a touchdown that you have to make up now. And now, why am I saying this? Why am I saying that these defenses were less than stellar? And I'll tell you right now, Pittsburgh was not. Pittsburgh was a great defense as far as, rush stopping and things like that. So that was fine. But let's look at these other guys here. So let's start from right here where he finally starts picking it up, and he kind of starts this great streak. So it's got Green Bay, and basically Houston, and then the Raiders, right? So Green Bay, Houston, Raiders. Let's remember that. So going back to defensive efficiency, Green Bay was 19th in defensive efficiency, so below average. And then we have the Texans at 30th, and then the Raiders at 31st. So those are the three teams he starts off hot with, and that's kind of where he starts this streak. So he goes from below average or just below average to basically bottom of the barrel defenses. So who came after those 3 games where he kept this streak alive? Well, let's take a look. So after Houston and Vegas, there's Houston again. So obviously, again, they were ranked 30th. So another 30th ranked defense. Pittsburgh, like I said, was ranked number 5, and he showed up. But let's point this out. He had 2 touchdowns here, 2 rushing touchdowns. That's 12 points. So if those touchdowns don't go his way, and if you've been playing fantasy for any amount of time, you know that touchdowns are not really a sticky stat for the most part. Running backs usually are maybe the stickiest, but this doesn't always work out. If it happens to be, a score that they're getting from like the 8-yard line, that might not be a rushing touchdown. That might be a passing touchdown. He might not even be on the field if it's like 3rd and 8. So things like that need to be considered. So if he only gets 1 touchdown, or maybe he doesn't get any, he ends up with 7 points, 7 or 13 points. So keep that in mind here. Jacksonville, he had 39 points. Let's take a look and see where they were at on the defensive efficiency. Jacksonville is right here at number 22. So these are the teams that he played against. And even the Titans were 15. In that week, I said he didn't do very well, which is the first one. He had 3 points. So 3 points is what he gave you against a basically average defense. So remember that, guys. When you're in your draft and you've heard all these analysts talking up Jonathan Taylor, and he's a first-round pick, and he's safe, and blah, 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 and there's nothing to worry about, his schedule was one of the easiest running back schedules, and I don't know why no one's bringing that up. I don't know why David Montgomery is getting a hard time about his easy schedule, but Jonathan Taylor, it just gets swept under the rug. I'm assuming maybe it's because it was his rookie year, and his, quote-unquote easy schedule lasted longer. It wasn't just like a 4-week streak. This was basically the second half of your season. So maybe that's what it is. And it was just great scheduling and kind of people watching him already because he was a rookie. It was a breakout. Don't be fooled by that. I do not see him repeating that, and I don't see him getting as much of the workload as he did before. I'm skipping on him, guys. Unless like I said, he really falls to the end of the second round, don't grab him. Aside from that, let's go to another fantasy one. So Jonnu, and if you've been watching my channel for a little bit right now, you know that I love Jonnu Smith. I think he's going to end up as a top 5 tight end. A couple things I have just to back that up. So one, he was the first tight end that the Patriots signed. I know people make a big deal about Hunter Henry being there, and yes, Hunter Henry is a great player, but at the end of the day, when free agency started, Bill Belichick's first call was to Jonnu Smith. Bill Belichick is on record having said that he loves Jonnu Smith. He loves his abilities after the catch. Now he's probably the best tight end in the NFL after the catch. He is enamored with this guy's ability. I am promising you he's going to use him. And whether you have Cam Newton, a guy who likes to run and pass kind of short, or you have Mac Jones in there, a rookie who's going to love the easy dump off to his tight end, both of those guys are going to utilize their big, fast, athletic, sure-handed tight end who can make something happen after the catch. I guarantee you that. And maybe he doesn't end up being top 5, but even if he's top 8, he's going way too late. Right now, I think he's like in the 11th round for the most part, depending on where you're drafting at. So I would take Jonnu, guys, and I would not worry about it. And he's one of those players that if you take him, I really don't even feel too bad if I don't end up with a second tight end if you're playing that kind of game where you have 2 tight ends. There's too much going in his favor with what we expect to be a heavy running team, quarterbacks that are going to really fall in love with our tight ends, and the fact that Hunter Henry was the second guy signed and the second guy that Bill tried to grab onto his team. And Hunter Henry, maybe Jonnu is the better blocker of the two, but I don't think that that's going to be his main usage. I think Bill brought him in there to catch passes. They're not paying him the amount of money that they're paying him to sit there and block. Secondly, and that's an important part of this, he's getting paid more money, and I believe it's something like $20 million more in his contract than Hunter Henry. He's got an extra year. He's a 4-year contract versus a 3-year contract. Jonnu, they've made it known with their money, Jonnu is their guy. So don't be fooled by Hunter Henry. Don't worry about having 2 tight ends there. And I'm not saying Hunter Henry won't get used and he won't piss you off some weekends, but Jonnu's going to be a top tight end. I have him in my top 5. I actually think he's going to end up being like number 4 behind the big 3. Aside from that, let's go ahead and get into some, just gambling notes here. So 49ers to win the division. This is another one I've brought up before, but the 49ers to win the division right now is at about plus 190, depending on where you're at. They have the easiest schedule of the entire NFL, and it's right here on the screen right now. So for the full season, they are leaps and bounds above everybody else as far as just easy schedule. So I'm taking them to win the division. Yes, I think the Seahawks are really good. Yes, I think the Rams are really good. And I actually think the Rams have a chance to get into the Super Bowl. Now, everybody's kind of loving the Rams right now because of the talent they have on paper, and everybody still loves Sean McVay. And that's great. And I think that we shouldn't just knock it just because everybody likes it, but usually doesn't work out where the public is right. Usually something happens. We're already seeing some injuries pop up. They do have a tougher schedule. They have the 23rd easiest schedule, meaning that it's pretty tough. It's on the second half of that list here, and they're just not going to have an easy path to get there. They need to have things really work in their favor, have a good injury luck, and capitalize on any win that they can get. And sometimes the ball just bounces the wrong way. So that all being said, though, San Francisco, I think that they win this division just by their schedule alone. At the end of the day, I think all 3 of those teams in the division, the Seahawks, the 49ers, and the Rams, are all pretty evenly matched as far as talent on paper. 49ers just have the better schedule, and they have the deeper team. If Garoppolo does start the season and he goes down for whatever reason, which he's known to do, they're going to throw Trey Lance in there. So not a big drop-off, and actually a little bit of a different game. And somebody who doesn't have a lot of film out there, so they are going to have the element of surprise. They have Raheem Mostert. If he goes down, which, again, he's also known to do, then they'll put in Trey Sermon, a rookie with, again, not as much tape on him, and just immense talent, with everybody I've heard really ranking him as the best rookie talent out there as far as running backs are concerned. Aside from that, even their receiving core is pretty legit, guys. I mean, with Brandon Ayuk coming across the field, a speedster, really great after the catch, guy can just get separation, and he's listed as their quote-unquote number one receiver, but behind him they have Debo. Maybe he is a little bit more of a gadget receiver, but Shanahan knows how to use him, and I see him having another great year. I think people have shit on him too much this year, and because he's maybe their number 2 guy, but it's very hard to cover him, and it's very hard to double Ayuk or Samuel because you're going to leave somebody open. And even if you manage to shut those guys down, you still have to try to match up with George Kittle, which is my last note here. So you have a tight end that, if he can stay healthy, is just an immense mismatch for anybody out there. You can't bring up the safeties to try and stop the run without having to worry about one of these guys getting open as far as the pass catchers are concerned. And even if Samuel gets hurt, Ayuk is still there. If Ayuk for whatever reason gets hurt, you still have Samuel there. And if both of them are hurt, you still have George Kittle to contend with, plus that backfield who can catch the ball, whether it's Sermon or Mostert. They can both catch the ball and do a lot after the catch. So for those reasons, I have them winning the division. Next, let's go ahead and go into Tua. So the Dolphins, they also have an easier schedule. It's not number 1 overall, obviously, but it's the 10th easiest schedule in the entire NFL, and I think it's going to really work out for Tua. I know a lot of people are down on him, and they're kind of overlooking him as far as like fantasy is concerned or gambling. We have to remember that he came off that huge injury last year, and he didn't have an offseason due to COVID. He didn't really get to condition very well. And then he was playing with a offense that just wasn't meant for him. It was meant for Fitzpatrick. And then he was having to deal with kind of different receivers coming in and out of the lineup. And then Devontae Parker did go down for a little bit of time there. So it was just a rough season for him. Rough for most rookies, but especially for a quarterback. This year has the full offseason. It is really and truly his team. They've built the offense around him. They brought in Jalen Waddle, and Devontae Parker is hopefully healthy for most of the year, at least starts off healthy. And they have the pieces around him, and the team is dedicated to him. The coaching staff is dedicated to him. This guy should have a great season. He can not only run, he can get out of the pocket, he can throw on the move. He showed up really well in preseason. He's had a great training camp. He's connected with Jalen Waddle. So the rookie that he used to play with, in college, they should still have that connection there. And then he's got Devontae Parker as a deep threat, guys. Tua could be amazing, and a lot of touts that I know are really hyping him up when nobody else out there is. And so guys like Warren Sharp, who, just to throw it out there, he had a huge bet on Lamar Jackson in Lamar's second year when nobody was really looking at him. And he told everybody that would listen to him, Lamar Jackson's going to be the MVP this year before the season even started. And he called it. And he actually won me a fantasy league because I took Lamar Jackson that year at the very end of like most of my fantasy drafts. I think Tua is going to be that for us this year. Last year, Kyler was that for us, as a second-year quarterback who kind of took a step up. He did get injured, so we didn't get to see the full effect. But he had a great first half of the season, and I think as long as Tua can stay healthy, he should have a very similar season, and he's going to finish as a top 8 quarterback. So whether you want to take some props on him for betting, or you want to grab him late in your fantasy draft as maybe the high upside guy, I would do that. His first game is against the Patriots. That's going to be a little bit tougher, and Will Fuller is suspended for that game. But after that, I could see him really taking off with guys like Will Fuller stretching the field, Devontae Parker playing across the middle, or just, again, stretching the field as well, and then Waddle playing in as a slot. He can go wherever he wants with this ball, and if nothing's open, he'll run. So look for Tua to have a great year, guys. Lastly, though, on the same team, on this Dolphins team, I just want to throw in a note there. I like Malcolm Brown. I don't know if you necessarily want to play him a lot in your fantasy drafts. Maybe it's more of like a DFS kind of thing, and maybe you want to bet something on him as far as like a prop is concerned, whether it's a game, week 1 or the season long or whatever. But I don't think Myles Gaskin is going to be the starter. But even if he is the starter, I don't see him getting as much work as he did last year, and he wasn't getting the full load last year either. So I see Malcolm Brown coming in this as at least a goal line back, at the very least. He's not only big and strong, he's fast, he's shifty, and I've had a lot of time watching this guy. So he did play at Texas, and I watched him a lot in Texas. He was amazing. He actually played in San Antonio, which here in Texas we get to see a lot of their high school games. He did really great in high school. He didn't really lose a step in college, and then he went to the Rams, and we got to watch him on the Rams. And so the Rams utilized him really well, and he was obviously always a backup. But when you're playing with guys like Todd Gurley and then Darrell Henderson, you know, you're going to probably be a backup. And that's not to say that Henderson is the best running back in the world, but the guy has some moves, and Malcolm Brown was still getting playing time. So Sean McVay saw something in him, or at least wanted to use him a certain way, and he looked great doing it. I do see the Dolphins using maybe a little bit of a different approach with him as far as like using him as a goal line guy, but I wouldn't be surprised to see him take over more of the, you know, between the 20s work. And if he starts getting work, even if it's just early down work, and even if it's not every series, even if it's just like every other series, or he's just spelling guys, and then he's taking the goal line, he's the back you want out of Miami. Like I said, even if he's spelling guys, even if it's just, hey, Gaskin had a 25-yard run, so let's throw Malcolm Brown in there to give him a chance to catch his breath, and he's getting whatever yards through that, and then he's getting 1 or 2 touchdowns, and you can get him with like your last skill position pick, you can get him with like the 14th round pick in your draft, I would take him. If Gaskin gets hurt, there's anything, you know, goes wrong on that team, he's getting in there, and he's gonna do some work, and he's gonna do some damage, and he's a lot better than he's perceived. And so if you can get your hands on that guy, it's going to be worth that last pick, which is basically free, and give him some time. Like I said, that first week, I do think is going to be a little bit rougher for that team. Not only are they playing the Patriots, who are they're going to be in fuck you mode, so I don't want to get the Patriots way this year. But after that, and then again, when, like I said, when they get Will Fuller back, everybody's up and running and they're ready to go, I see Malcolm Brown having a really good year. So this is just some things to look at, guys. Like I said, these are hot takes from me, so I don't expect to be right on all 5 of these, but I do think these are some things you should be aware of and be looking out for. So hopefully with those hot takes and the picks that you've been given, you learned something today. I hope we all have a good weekend this weekend as far as football is concerned. Watching these games, pick up what you can out of these last couple of games here, and let's get ready to roll into week 1. Thank you. Have a great day.